Some people say that a mother's love can overcome anything. I used to believe that too. I believed it when I worked late nights to help pay off our first home. I believed it when I gave up my weekends to make sure my kids had everything they needed. From soccer practice carpools to science fair projects. I believed it when I married my husband, thinking we'd always share the burdens of life equally. But lately, I've been questioning what equal even means anymore, and whether it's really love, if it leaves you so drained you can barely feel anything at all. I live in a suburban corner of America. The kind of place where minivans line driveways and everyone pretends to have it all together. My husband works at the shipyard, putting in long, grueling hours. I work in real estate, which means my hours aren't just long, they are unpredictable. Showing homes on weekends, answering client calls at odd hours, and squeezing in paperwork between daycare pickups has become my normal. We're a two-income family, but at times, it feels like I'm pulling double the weight at home. We have 4 kids, our 13-year-old twins, a 12-year-old, and our youngest, who's just 8 months old. I love them fiercely. But some days, love doesn't feel like enough. Some days, it feels like I'm drowning in a sea of dirty dishes, endless laundry, and unmet expectations. The dishes. Oh, the dishes. Of all the things that could break me, you'd think it wouldn't be that. But when you've asked your family for the 100th time to wash their plates and they act like you're speaking a foreign language, it starts to feel personal. I thought I had everything figured out once. I even set up a chore system when the older kids were little. It worked for a while. But now, it's like everyone has collectively decided that mom will just take care of it. And I've been too tired to fight back until now. When you're juggling work, kids, and a household, there's no room for perfection. I learned that a long time ago. You settle for good enough and hope no one notices the cracks. But lately, good enough has started to feel like a lie I tell myself to get through the day. My mornings are a blur of chaos. I'm usually up before dawn, tiptoeing past the baby's crib so she doesn't wake up too early. I pack lunches for the older kids while guzzling coffee like it's the only thing keeping me alive. My husband's already at the shipyard by then, which means the mornings are mine to handle alone. I've gotten used to the whirlwind, getting everyone dressed, fed, and out the door while trying to look halfway presentable for work. Then there's the baby. She's my heart, my joy, but also my constant shadow. I drop her off at daycare, feeling a pang of guilt every time. She's still so little. Shouldn't I be home with her? But then I remember the mortgage, the car payments, the groceries. Staying home isn't an option. Not in this economy. Work is its own beast. Real estate isn't a 9-to-5 job. It's answering calls while driving, sneaking in emails during lunch, and keeping a cheerful tone even when a client is demanding things you can't deliver. I love what I do. But some days it feels like there's nothing left of me by the time I clock out. And then I come home. You'd think walking through the front door would feel like a relief. But more often than not, it feels like stepping into another shift. The older kids are usually glued to their screens, video games, YouTube, TikTok, whatever's trending that week. The baby is in her walker, babbling at no one because everyone's too busy to notice. And my husband, he's on the couch, scrolling on his phone like he hasn't a care in the world. The house is usually a mess, but I've learned to ignore most of it. Toys on the floor. Fine. Piles of laundry. Annoying, but manageable. But the dishes. The dishes are my breaking point. It's not just that I hate washing them, it's what they represent. Every unwashed dish is a reminder that no one is listening. No one is helping. No one cares that I've asked. Begged. Demanded. I've tried everything to get them to pitch in. Chore charts. Rewards. Punishments. Nothing sticks. And the worst part? My husband is no better than the kids. He's supposed to be my partner. My equal. But somewhere along the way, he decided that his job ends when he walks through the door. Mine doesn't. That Saturday started like any other. I was up early, juggling 1,000 things at once. My husband had the day off, so he stayed in bed while I got the baby ready for daycare and prepped breakfast for the older kids. Before I left for work, I made one thing clear: the dishes had to be done by the time I got home. Don't forget, I said, looking each of them in the eye. I'm serious this time. No excuses. They all nodded. Yes. They said, as if humoring me. I should have known better. The day at work was exhausting. Showing houses, negotiating contracts, and dealing with last-minute client demands left me drained. By the time I texted my husband to ask what they wanted for dinner, I was running on fumes. He replied with their usual favorite spaghetti and garlic bread. Easy enough, I thought. I stopped at the grocery store on my way home, picturing the warm meal I'd make for my family. But when I walked through the door, all those warm, fuzzy thoughts vanished. The sink was overflowing with dishes. Not only had they not washed a single plate, but they'd also added to the pile breakfast dishes, lunch dishes, and even snack bowls were stacked precariously, mocking me. The counters were sticky with spilled juice, and there was a trail of crumbs leading to the living room. I found my husband on the couch, his phone in hand, YouTube playing loudly. The kids were in their rooms, headphones on, oblivious to the world around them. And the baby. She was in her walker, staring at the chaos with wide, curious eyes. Something inside me snapped. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I just set the groceries on the table, packed a bag for the baby, and walked out. I drove to the nearest Applebee's, not even sure what I was doing. All I knew was that I needed a break. I needed to feel like a human being again, even if it was just for an hour. Sitting at Applebee's with the baby felt like stepping into an alternate reality. For once, I wasn't rushing through bites while juggling cries, complaints, or chaos. It was just me. A perfectly cooked steak and shrimp platter. And the kind of silence that felt like a luxury. The clatter of dishes from the kitchen and the hum of quiet conversations around me made it even more surreal. This was peace. And I could barely remember the last time I had it. Then my phone buzzed, breaking the spell. It was my husband. I washed the dishes, he said, his voice thick with guilt. I'm sorry. I was just really tired today. I didn't bite. My anger hadn't cooled, it had crystallized. That's no excuse, I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. You had all day. The kids had all day. And not one of you lifted a finger. He fumbled through another apology. But I wasn't having it. Figure out dinner yourselves, I snapped. I'm not coming home right now. When I finally walked through the door hours later, the house was eerily quiet. Like everyone was holding their breath. The sink sparkled. The groceries had been neatly put away. And not a soul was in sight. I later learned they had made a desperate dinner of grilled cheese and cereal. And the older kids had gone to bed grumbling. My husband barely looked at me. The tension hung in the air. But for once, I didn't feel burdened by it. Instead, I felt something new, a quiet triumph. They were upset. Sure. But they finally understood. I wasn't going to shoulder everything alone anymore. The ball was in their court. And it felt good to let it stay there. After a pivotal moment of frustration, the narrator reflects on how her family's lack of accountability and her overburdened role in the household led to this breaking point. She questions her part in enabling the situation by taking on too much and decides to make meaningful changes for both her family and herself. She starts setting clear boundaries. If chores weren't done, there were direct consequences, such as no dinner or wearing wrinkled clothes. While her family initially resisted, with her husband grumbling and the kids whining, they eventually began to take responsibility. Over time, they stepped up, marking the beginning of a healthier balance in the household and the narrator's journey toward self-care and asserting her needs. Things aren't perfect now. They never will be. But they are better. My husband has started helping out more without me having to ask. The kids are learning to take responsibility for their chores. And I've learned to prioritize my own needs, even if it means walking out to Applebee's every now and then. I've realized that love isn't about doing everything for everyone. It's about teaching them to stand on their own and making sure you take care of yourself along the way.